They don't rot. They don't stumble. They control. Deep in the jungle, there's a real fungus that hijacks its victim's mind, forcing them to walk, climb, and spread the infection before finally killing them. It's not fiction. The Last of Us only twisted what nature has already written. But how far could it really go?
Do you dare to watch After Dark? Get your chills and thrills every month with spine-tingling, spooky deep dives, blood-curdling killer legends, and stories so twisted they'll haunt your dreams. Creepy tales from Sugar Drip Horror. Stay tuned if you dare.
Welcome back to Sugar Drip Horror, the creepiest corner of YouTube. It's zombie month, and I've got a lot more coming your way. This is one of several deep dives I'm doing throughout June, and trust me, I've got plenty more planned. Quick reminder, this isn't the full episode for the month. That's still coming and will drop no later than June 14th, hopefully a bit sooner. But until then, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, and let me know what you think. Alright, let's get started. Cordyceps sounds like the name of a monster, and in many ways it absolutely is. But instead of rising from a grave or lurking in the shadows, Cordyceps operates on a far smaller, far more terrifying scale. Scientifically speaking, Cordyceps is a genus of ascomycete fungi, with over 400 known species. Most of these fungi are endoparasitoids, meaning they infect a host from within, slowly feeding off it and ultimately killing it. Their primary targets? Insects and arthropods. If that already sounds unsettling, buckle up because this is where it gets truly disturbing. Over time, scientists have reclassified some of these fungi based on genetic studies, and one species in particular has become infamous. Ophiocordyceps unilateralis. You've probably heard it called the zombie ant fungus. And yes, it does exactly what the name suggests. So how does Ophiocordyceps unilateralis turn an ant into its personal puppet? The infection process starts small. Fungal spores land on the exoskeleton of a foraging ant. These spores latch onto the outer shell, where they germinate and start producing hyphae, thread-like structures that penetrate the ant's body. They use both brute force and biochemical weapons like chitinases and proteases to break through the ant's defenses. Once inside, the fungus multiplies within the ant's body cavity. But, and here's the creepy part, it doesn't kill the ant right away. Instead, it consumes non-vital tissues first, leaving the ant alive just long enough to complete its gruesome mission. Roughly 4 to 10 days after infection, the behavioral manipulation begins. The ant starts to act erratically. It stumbles, convulses, and eventually falls from the safety of the canopy to the forest floor. But the fungus isn't done. The ant then climbs nearby vegetation to a very specific height, around 25 centimeters off the ground, often on the north side of a plant. Once there, the ant locks its mandibles onto a leaf vein in what's called the death grip. This grip is no accident. It's orchestrated by the fungus directly, weakening and hijacking the ant's jaw muscles. With the host secured in place, the fungus continues its final act. The ant dies, and the cordyceps keeps growing, eventually bursting out of the back of the ant's head in a stalk-like fruiting body. This grotesque stalk releases spores into the air, ready to infect the next unsuspecting ant, and the cycle continues. Now, for years, researchers believed the fungus might actually invade the ant's brain to pull off this horror show. But recent studies have shown something even more bizarre. The brain remains mostly untouched. Instead, the fungus focuses on the muscles, specifically those controlling movement and jaw clamping. It weaves a dense network of hyphae into these muscles, essentially remote controlling the ant's body without taking over its mind. it's body horror at a molecular level. Even more disturbing, Cordyceps unilateralis is incredibly picky. It has evolved to infect very specific ant species like Camponotus leonardi. If it infects the wrong species, it may still kill the host, but it can't trigger the same behavioral manipulation. Without that perfect host match, the fungus can't reproduce. This level of species specificity is likely due to the fungus producing highly targeted biochemical compounds, almost like a key designed to fit only one lock. So, while the infected ants may look like the Walking Dead, they're really more like unwilling marionettes, trapped, manipulated, and driven to their deaths by a parasite that knows exactly how to push their buttons. If there's one piece of modern media that dragged Cordyceps fully into the public eye, it's The Last of Us. Both the game and the HBO series take the real-world horrors of Cordyceps and push them one terrifying step further, into humanity itself. In the world of The Last of Us, Cordyceps mutates. This is no longer the insect-targeting fungus from tropical rainforests. This version has crossed species boundaries, and now fully capable of infecting humans. They call it Cordyceps brain infection, or CBI for short. While entirely fictional, the foundation for this pandemic is deeply inspired by Cordyceps unilateralis, the real-world parasite known for hijacking ants. But in the game and the show, the stakes are massively higher. Now, The Last of Us universe splits depending on whether you're playing the original 2013 game or watching the 2023 HBO adaptation. Both tell the same broad story, but the details of how the infection spreads vary quite a bit. In the video game, transmission is mostly handled in two ways: through airborne spores that float through the environment, and through bites from infected individuals, allowing the fungus to transfer directly into new hosts. The game's outbreak kicks off in 2013, spreading rapidly across the globe and plunging civilization into chaos. In the HBO series, the timeline shifts. The initial outbreak happens earlier, in 2003, and when we meet our characters 20 years later, it's 2023. The major change? The initial transmission doesn't involve spores at all. Instead, infection spreads through the global food supply, specifically contaminated flour products. That single terrifying detail grounds the show's version of the pandemic in an unsettling, plausible chain of events, the kind that sparks all sorts of real-world fears. A chilling new addition to the series is the inclusion of a mycology professor in Jakarta. She quickly realizes the scope of the outbreak and immediately recommends bombing the city in a desperate attempt to stop the spread. The infection in The Last of Us doesn't simply kill its victims, it transforms them, stage by stage, into something inhuman. The longer a person remains infected, the more dramatic and grotesque their transformation becomes. Stage 1, runners. This stage kicks in just 1 to 2 days after infection. Physically, they still appear mostly human, but mentally they're gone, hyper-aggressive, fast, and violently uncontrollable. Stage 2, stalkers. Developing somewhere between 2 weeks to a year post-infection. The fungus has begun to visibly emerge, with growths bursting through the skin. Stalkers exhibit stealthy, predatory behavior, often hiding in the shadows, waiting for victims. Stage 3, clickers. Appearing after roughly a year of infection, the host is now entirely blind, with fungal plates overtaking the skull. They rely on echolocation, making unsettling clicking noises to navigate and hunt. Stage 4, bloaters, reached after several years of infection. At this point, the fungal growth is heavily armored and grotesquely massive. Bloaters are incredibly strong and can hurl mycotoxin bombs as a form of ranged attack. Another variant, shamblers, introduced in The Last of Us Part 2, often found in humid environments. Shamblers emit acidic clouds of spores and carry explosive pustules that burst on contact. This is where the game and show most noticeably diverge. In the video game, airborne spores are the primary transmission mechanism. Certain areas become dangerous hot zones where characters must wear gas masks to survive. In the HBO series, spores are largely absent during the early episodes. Instead, infection occurs via physical contact, primarily bites, but also through invasive fungal tendrils that extend from infected individuals. These tendrils are all part of an underground mycelial network, which connects infected hosts to one another like one massive fungal nervous system. Later episodes hint at the possibility that spores may eventually re-emerge as the infection evolves. Perhaps one of the most chilling differences introduced in the series is the addition of the hive mind element. Through this interconnected network of fungal tendrils, the infected can communicate and coordinate. A disturbance in one area of the network alerts others nearby. Attacks can be coordinated without verbal communication. The more that are infected, the stronger the network becomes. This hive mind aspect heightens the horror. It's no longer just individual creatures, it's a collective organism working as one terrifying parasitic intelligence. The Last of Us paints a terrifying picture. What if Cordyceps mutated to infect people? What if one day humans weren't just hosts to viruses or bacteria, but to mind-controlling fungi? As horrifying as that idea is, let's separate fear from fact. Could Cordyceps actually make the jump to humans? The real Cordyceps fungi, including Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, are highly specialized parasites. They've spent millions of years evolving alongside insects, especially ants, and they're fine-tuned for that role. Their leap to humans isn't as simple as it looks on screen. One of the biggest biological barriers is temperature. This is mentioned in the show too. The Cordyceps species that infect ants are adapted to thrive in cooler-bodied hosts, generally insects whose internal temperatures sit around 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. That's about 68 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Humans, on the other hand, sit at a toasty 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That higher temperature isn't just coincidence. It's part of the human body's defense system. Most fungal species can't tolerate that kind of internal heat. For many fungi, including Cordyceps, the human body is simply too hot to survive in. It's like trying to grow snowflakes in a furnace. Temperature isn't the only hurdle. Cordyceps fungi are also extremely host-specific. They aren't broad-spectrum parasites. Each species tends to infect only one very specific insect. Take Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, for example. It's perfectly evolved to hijack the behavior of carpenter ants. It knows how their bodies work. It knows how to control their muscles. It even knows how to manipulate their brains, or rather, avoid the brain, while still controlling behavior through the body. The same level of mastery wouldn't translate to humans. Our physiology is far more complex. Our immune systems, neural pathways, and muscular control systems are nothing like those of ants. For Cordyceps to make that leap would require an evolutionary overhaul so massive it borders on impossible. The scientific consensus on all of this is pretty clear. Cordyceps infecting humans remains firmly in the realm of fiction. This hasn't stopped experts from weighing in, though. Dr. Shmuel Shoham, an infectious disease expert at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, puts it plainly. The human body's temperature alone creates a natural barrier most fungi simply can't overcome. Our own biology protects us. Dr. Arturo Casadevall, professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, echoes this. While the concept of cordyceps-like infection in humans is intriguing, he stresses that Cordyceps is hyper-specialized for insects. Its leap to humans would require levels of adaptation that are highly improbable. But what about climate change? Now, while Ophiocordyceps itself isn't coming for us, that doesn't mean fungi aren't a growing threat. One very real factor complicating the fungal landscape is climate change. As global temperatures rise, so too does the change that certain fungi will adapt to thrive at higher temperatures closer to what humans live at. Candida Auris offers a sobering example. This multi-drug resistant fungus has emerged as a major health concern in recent years. Some scientists believe that climate change played a role in its ability to adapt to human temperatures. Once restricted to cooler environments, it now poses a serious threat in healthcare settings. And it doesn't stop there. A University of Manchester study warns that by the year 2100, we could see a massive expansion of Aspergillus fungi across the globe. Some species could spread over 75% farther than their current range, increasing the risk of invasive lung infections and other diseases. The lesson here is that fungi are incredibly adaptable organisms. While Cordyceps might not be ready to infect humans anytime soon, climate change is already shaping which fungi can survive, spread, and infect us in other ways. This makes ongoing research and preparation for fungal diseases more important than ever. The bottom line is, the nightmare scenario from The Last of Us may be scientifically far-fetched, but fungal threats themselves are very real and they're growing. As the planet changes, so too does the microbial world around us. And while a fungal zombie apocalypse remains fiction, fungi are evolving, whether we're ready or not. Let's talk a bit more about Candida auris. While The Last of Us imagines a terrifying fictional world where Cordyceps mutates to infect humans, reality has delivered its own fungal threat, one that doesn't need any creative liberties to be dangerous: Candida auris. Candida auris is a species of yeast first identified in Japan back in 2009. Since then, it's spread worldwide, alarming medical communities everywhere. Unlike most fungi, C. auris isn't just opportunistic, it's aggressive. It resists multiple antifungal drugs, survives on surfaces for extended periods, and has been responsible for deadly outbreaks in hospitals and healthcare facilities. What makes C. auris especially frightening isn't some science fiction body-snatching scenario. It's how it behaves like an invisible invader inside real-world medical systems. Most C. auris outbreaks occur in hospitals, nursing homes, and long-term care facilities. Patients who are already vulnerable, those staying long periods, requiring invasive devices like catheters or breathing tubes, or receiving broad-spectrum antibiotics, are particularly at risk. This fungus is remarkably resilient. It can survive for weeks on hospital surfaces, bed rails, medical equipment, even clothing. And while it's not as contagious as a virus, C. auris can still spread from person to person through direct contact with infected individuals or contaminated environments. In the controlled world of healthcare, that kind of persistence is a nightmare. Infection control becomes exponentially harder when the enemy lingers on every surface. So what are the symptoms? C. auris infections don't always present with clear warning signs. In fact, many of its symptoms mimic other conditions, making diagnosis challenging without specialized lab tests. Depending on where it strikes, symptoms can include fever, chills, and signs of sepsis if it infects the bloodstream, a condition known as candidemia, redness, swelling, or discharge if wounds become infected, ear pain, discharge, and hearing loss when infecting the ear. Because many infected patients already have serious underlying illnesses, the symptoms often blend into existing health issues, delaying diagnosis and treatment. For patients who develop invasive infections, mortality rates range from 30 to 60%. The more compromised a patient's immune system is, the more dangerous C. auris becomes. In the United States, C. auris didn't appear until 2016. Since then, the number of cases has surged dramatically. In 2023 alone, over 4,500 new clinical cases were reported across the country, and the US is not alone. In the United Kingdom, bloodstream infections caused by C. auris and related Candida species have also risen sharply. Experts point to several contributing factors: increased use of antibiotics, longer hospital stays, and the growing vulnerability of patients with complex medical needs. The World Health Organization has now classified Candida auris as a critical priority pathogen, recognizing just how difficult it is to control, treat, and eliminate once it's present in a healthcare setting. Beyond C. auris, there are even more serious and rare fungal threats. One of the most feared is fungal meningitis. Unlike bacterial or viral meningitis, fungal meningitis develops when fungi enter the bloodstream and travel to the brain and spinal cord, infecting the membranes that protect the central nervous system. The result is inflammation of the meninges, and often severe life-threatening illness. Several fungi can cause this condition, including Cryptococcus neoformans, which most often strikes individuals with weakened immune systems, such as those living with HIV/AIDS. Histoplasma, typically found in areas where bird or bat droppings accumulate, especially in the central and eastern United States. Coccidioides, also known as valley fever, endemic to the southwestern US and parts of Central and South America. Blastomyces, found in decaying organic matter, primarily in the Midwest and south-central US. Symptoms mirror other forms of meningitis: severe headaches, fever, stiff neck, sensitivity to light, nausea, vomiting, confusion, and even seizures or altered mental status. The people at most risk are those whose immune defenses are already compromised, like cancer patients, organ transplant recipients, people taking immunosuppressive medications, or those living with chronic diseases. A real-world nightmare was the 2012 meningitis outbreak. In 2012, the United States saw one of the most serious fungal meningitis outbreaks, not due to natural exposure, but a tragic case of pharmaceutical contamination. Steroid injections, contaminated during manufacturing by the New England Compounding Center, were distributed across 20 states. The result was 753 fungal meningitis cases with 64 deaths. The fungus responsible, Xerohilum rostratum, isn't typically known for infecting humans, but once injected directly into the spinal area, it bypassed normal immune defenses, leading to deadly infections. The disaster forced US regulators to crack down on compounding pharmacies and tighten oversight of sterile drug manufacturing. It was a chilling reminder that fungal threats don't always require elaborate fictional pandemics. Sometimes human error is enough. Whether it's Candida auris, fungal meningitis, or hypothetical nightmare scenarios like Cordyceps adaptations, one thing is clear: fungi are increasingly making their presence known in medical headlines. They don't spread the way viruses do, but once they take hold, they're remarkably difficult to stop. The truth is, while a Cordyceps-style zombie apocalypse is still firmly planted in the horror genre, the growing list of real-life fungal infections is no longer science fiction. It's an active and evolving part of modern infectious disease research. The fictional version of a fungal apocalypse, like what we see in The Last of Us, might seem extreme, but beneath that fiction lies a real-world concern that's slowly creeping closer to reality. Fungi, long overlooked as major threats, are beginning to emerge as one of the most unsettling frontiers in infectious disease. One of the biggest drivers behind this growing fungal threat is climate change. As global temperatures continue to rise, fungi are adapting. Many species that once couldn't survive inside the heat of the human body are slowly developing thermotolerance, meaning they're learning how to handle higher temperatures that used to serve as one of our key defenses. For example, Aspergillus fumigatus, a common mold species, is predicted to expand its range by as much as 77% by the year 2100. That could expose millions more people across Europe, North America, and beyond to potentially life-threatening fungal infections. When fungi that once only lived safely in the soil or environment start thriving at a human body temperature, the risk of new emerging infections grows significantly. And unlike bacteria or viruses, these fungal threats often come with limited treatment options. It's not just their adaptation to temperature that poses a problem. Fungi are also becoming resistant to antifungal medications. In both agriculture and medicine, antifungal drugs, particularly azole-based treatments, are widely used. On farms, these chemicals help prevent crop loss. In medicine, they're life-saving treatments for immunocompromised patients. But this heavy use has a downside. Fungi like Aspergillus fumigatus have started developing resistance. That resistance can render existing antifungal treatments ineffective, leading to higher treatment failure rates and, in some cases, dramatically higher mortality. The more antifungal resistance spreads, the more difficult it becomes to control even routine fungal infections. And unlike bacterial infections, when we've seen massive global investment in antibiotic research, antifungal drug development has lagged far behind. The World Health Organization has recognized just how serious this threat is becoming. In response, they've developed a fungal priority pathogens list, essentially a global watch list of the most dangerous fungal threats we face right now. This list highlights the critical gaps in treatment options, the weaknesses in current diagnostic tools, and the urgent need for new research and therapies. One of the biggest problems? Diagnostics. In many parts of the world, especially developing nations, labs simply aren't equipped to test for fungal infections at all. Infections often go undetected or misdiagnosed, allowing outbreaks to spread unnoticed. Part of what makes fungal threats so uniquely dangerous is how under-researched they've been compared to bacterial or viral diseases. Historically, mycology, which is the study of fungi, has received only a fraction of the funding allocated to other infectious disease research. As a result, huge gaps remain in our understanding of how fungal pathogens evolve, spread, and interact with humans. It's estimated that most fungal species on Earth haven't been described yet, let alone genetically sequenced. Without this data, it's impossible to anticipate where the next threat may come from or how it might behave. Hospitals and healthcare facilities are often poorly prepared to manage fungal outbreaks. Even something as routine as construction or renovation inside a hospital can disturb spores hiding in walls or ventilation systems, inadvertently triggering outbreaks that can sweep through vulnerable patient populations. Infection control protocols specifically designed for fungal threats remain underdeveloped in many regions, leaving hospitals dangerously exposed to outbreaks they're not equipped to contain. Despite how serious these threats are, public awareness remains low. Many people still view fungal infections as minor nuisances, like athlete's foot or yeast infections, without realizing the much more serious risks that exist in hospital settings or among immunocompromised patients. That's why organizations like the CDC have launched campaigns such as Fungal Disease Awareness Week, trying to educate healthcare providers and the public about the risks without inciting unnecessary panic. When people understand the warning signs, like persistent fever, unresponsive infections, unexplained symptoms after hospital stays, they're more likely to seek timely medical attention, increasing their chance of survival. At the same time, accessible education can reduce stigma around fungal diseases and build public support for desperately needed research. What makes fungal pandemics so unsettling isn't that we're facing a single outbreak right now, but that fungi as a category remain one of the least explored, least understood threats in modern infectious disease. The potential for fungal evolution under the pressures of climate change, drug resistance, and globalization is very real. And while we're not living in a Cordyceps apocalypse, the warning signs all point to a need for much more attention, investment, and respect for the world of fungi. This isn't about fear-mongering, it's about recognizing that fungi are no longer background characters in the world of infectious disease. They are rising players, and humanity is just beginning to pay attention. When looking at the world of The Last of Us, it's easy to get caught up in the terrifying spectacle, a world overtaken by fungal infection, where humanity crumbles and the infected roam in grotesque, parasitic forms. But as with many great horror stories, the scariest part isn't the fiction, it's the tiny seed of truth that inspires it. Cordyceps fungi, like Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, do exist. But in nature, they're perfectly adapted to insects, not humans. The show's depiction of a Cordyceps strain mutating to jump species is, for now, pure speculation. As experts remind us, our higher body temperatures, vastly different biology, and complex immune systems make this scenario highly improbable. But that doesn't mean fungi aren't a real and growing threat. Candida auris, fungal meningitis, rising antifungal resistance, and the looming impacts of climate change all represent very real dangers that scientists and healthcare providers are actively battling. Fungal pathogens are adapting, and gaps in research, funding, and public awareness have left us far less prepared than we should be. What The Last of Us gets right is this: we are vulnerable, but not necessarily in the ways pop culture imagines. The true horror lies not in zombies chasing us through ruined cities, but in silent outbreaks that spread in hospitals, resistant infections that defy treatment, and environmental shifts that open new doors for fungal evolution. Staying informed is not about fear, it's about power. Power to support scientific research, demand stronger healthcare systems, and recognize these threats before they grow beyond our control. Because understanding how these organisms work, both in nature and in fiction, might one day be the thing that allows us to face them without panic and survive. Thank you so much for hanging out all the way to the end of this one. I have to ask, did you watch The Last of Us, or did you play the game before it became the show? Let me know down in the comments. I love reading your thoughts, and I love chatting with you down there. Don't forget, this is Zombie Month, and it's far from over, and the full-length deep dive for this month will be dropping no later than June 14th. This Cordyceps episode is not this month's episode. This was just a bonus, and there might even be another bonus after the full episode on the 14th.